Julian Vance's perfectly tailored world felt off the moment his car crunched on the gravel an hour earlier than expected. An unnatural quiet hung over the Whitman estate, a silence that usually meant something was amiss. He found Lena in the living room, a crumpled heap on the plush rug, her body racked with silent sobs. His stomach clenched. Her cheek was already blooming with a purplish bruise, and her hand was pressed tight against her pregnant belly. "Lena, my God, what happened?" Julian rushed to her, his voice choked with alarm. She flinched, pulling away slightly, her tear-streaked eyes wide with a fear he'd never seen. It's nothing, Julian. I'm just so clumsy. Am I not good enough for this place? For you?" Her whispers were raw, laced with self-blame. From the hallway, hushed voices drifted. "Poor Madame Lena," one housekeeper murmured. Another replied, "It's always the same when the old lady visits." Julian's blood ran cold. The old lady. Later, Julian watched Lena move through the vast, sterile kitchen. Her movements were stiff, guarded, as if every joint protested. He saw her glance nervously towards the foyer, a quick, furtive dart of her eyes, anticipating a visitor. She paused at the gleaming tea kettle, her fingers trembling slightly, then seemed to hesitate, as if contemplating moving to a less exposed corner of the house. But the routine, the estate's unspoken rules, pulled her back. She poured the tea, her back to the door, a silent, desperate hope for invisibility clinging to her. Julian's jaw tightened. He knew that look. It was the look of someone waiting for a predator. Julian gently guided Lena to the nursery, a room still awaiting the final touches of new life. He noticed her subtle attempt to hide the bruise on her jaw, her practiced answers about an accident sounding hollow and rehearsed. During dinner, a simple butter knife grazed her wrist, and she flinched violently, a small, involuntary gasp escaping her lips. Julian's gaze, now sharpened by suspicion, traveled past Lena to the corner of their bedroom. There, almost forgotten, was a small, blinking red light, a security camera. A dawning, horrifying realization spread through him. The answers, he thought, might be recorded. Every single one. Julian's mind drifted back to the charity gala just weeks ago, a shimmering tableau of false perfection. His mother, Victoria Vance, had floated through the ballroom like a queen, her silk gown whispering against the marble, her smile a practiced masterpiece. Everyone adored her, saw her as the epitome of grace. He remembered her effortlessly charming the city's elite, then turning to Lena, her hand resting on Lena's arm, a seemingly innocuous gesture. "Such important family traditions, aren't they, dear?" Victoria had murmured, her voice like honey. Yet Julian now recalled Lena's subtle flinch, the way his mother's eyes had held a cold, possessive glint as she spoke of Lena's duty to the Vance name. The memory now felt like a cruel irony, a chilling prelude to the truth. The grand study felt heavy, its opulence suffocating. Julian pushed the door shut, the solid oak thudding softly, sealing him in. His heart pounded a slow, deliberate rhythm against his ribs. Each beat a drum of dread. He crossed the Persian rug, his steps heavy, his gaze fixed on the array of security monitors that hummed softly in the corner. This was it. The moment of truth. He took a deep, shuddering breath, the air thick with unspoken fears. His fingers, surprisingly steady, moved to the keypad. He entered the access code, the familiar clicks echoing in the silence, his jaw set in grim determination. He was ready to face whatever horrors the hidden eyes of his home had captured. Julian's fingers flew across the keyboard, fast-forwarding through hours of mundane footage. The screen flickered with blurs of the estate's pristine halls, the empty kitchen, the tranquil garden. He was looking for a ghost, a shadow, a moment that would explain the horror etched into Lena's face. Then, at 3:12 p.m. the previous day, a figure materialized in the kitchen feed, Victoria Vance. Julian's breath hitched. His mother entered with an almost predatory grace, her expensive silk dress flowing, her posture precise, calculating. She didn't glance at the camera, her focus already locked on something, or someone, out of frame. A cold dread settled in Julian's stomach. The staff whispers, the subtle fear in Lena's eyes, it all clicked into place. The footage continued, and Julian watched, mesmerized and repulsed. Victoria's body language shifted, becoming chillingly dominant. Her chin angled down, a sneer twisting her features. The polished mask of the matriarch slipped, revealing something ugly beneath. He saw her point a sharp, accusing finger at Lena, her lips forming silent, venomous words. "You don't belong here." Then, with a sudden, violent shove, Victoria pushed Lena back against the counter. Lena, already frail, winced, clutching her stomach in obvious pain. Julian's jaw tightened, a silent scream of outrage tearing through him. This was it. Undeniable. His mother. Julian couldn't look away, even as the images became a relentless assault. He fast-forwarded through the day, finding more instances, a sickening pattern emerging. Victoria hovering in the nursery doorway, her presence oppressive. Another clip showed her subtly blocking Lena's path with a misplaced chair, a deliberate act designed to trip or inconvenience. He watched as Victoria would help Lena with a domestic task, only to subtly sabotage it, making Lena drop something or spill, then offering a condescending sigh. It wasn't just physical, it was a psychological torment, a constant chipping away at Lena's spirit. Julian's rage simmered, a bitter taste in his mouth. The final clip Julian found was the most brutal. In the living room footage, Victoria turned, her hand flashing out. A quick, flat slap echoed silently across Lena's face, delivered with cold, practiced precision. Lena's head snapped back. She didn't cry out, didn't fight. She merely suppressed her pain, rubbing her cheek, a gesture Julian now recognized as heartbreakingly rehearsed. Just then, he heard hushed whispers from the hallway outside his study. The housekeepers. "Poor Madame Lena," one murmured. "And Mr. Julian, he never sees a thing." Guilt, hot and sharp, pierced Julian. He had been blind. He had been oblivious. And now, he burned with a fierce, unwavering determination. Julian Vance sank back into his leather chair, the glow of the monitor still reflecting the horrifying images in his eyes. His opulent study, once a sanctuary of control, now felt like a cage, suffocating him with its silent judgment. The Vance legacy, the very foundation of his life, lay shattered at his feet, exposed as a cruel deception. How could he, Julian Vance, a man who prided himself on his acumen, have been so blind? Guilt gnawed at him, a festering wound for every bruise, every flinch Lena had endured under his own roof. His mother, Victoria. The matriarch, the symbol of their prestige. To expose her meant tearing down everything he had built, publicly shaming the name his ancestors had carefully crafted. The thought was a bitter poison. But then, Lena's tear-streaked face flashed in his mind, her whispered self-deprecating questions echoing the silent slap from the footage. A fierce protective fire ignited within him, burning away the last vestiges of misguided loyalty. Family legacy meant nothing if it was built on cruelty and silence. Lena and the child she carried were his true legacy. He would protect them, no matter the cost. The initial shock gave way to a cold, calculated resolve. Julian knew an angry confrontation would be useless. Victoria would deny everything, spin a narrative of a fragile, manipulative daughter-in-law, and he would be left with only his word against hers. He needed irrefutable evidence. He needed her to incriminate herself, live and undeniable. He leaned forward, fingers flying across the keyboard, accessing the estate's sophisticated security system. Not just the cameras, but the audio. Every room Lena frequented, every potential interaction point. He meticulously adjusted sensitivities, ran diagnostic checks, ensuring no blind spots, no dead zones. This wasn't about vengeance. It was about justice. A grim necessity. He would create a scenario where Victoria, confident in her perceived power and his absence, would repeat her monstrous behavior. And this time, every whisper, every shove, every hateful glance would be recorded, time-stamped and undeniable. His gaze hardened, his jaw set. The trap was laid. The next morning, Julian awoke before dawn, the weight of his plan pressing down on him. He moved silently, kissing Lena's forehead as she slept, a pang of guilt for the deception he was about to orchestrate. He made a deliberate show of leaving, his brief words about early meetings sounding hollow even to his own ears. The powerful engine of his car purred to life, carrying him down the winding driveway and around the corner of the estate, just out of sight. He parked, the engine idling, and pulled out his tablet. The screen flickered to life, displaying a grid of live feeds from every corner of the house. He watched, his knuckles white, as the sun began to paint the sky. Now, all he could do was wait. Wait for Victoria. Julian's knuckles were white, gripping the tablet in his parked car. On the screen, Victoria Vance's silver sedan glided into the Whitman estate driveway, a predator returning to its hunting ground. She emerged, pristine and composed, using her own key to enter the grand house, utterly oblivious to the activated audio Julian had meticulously set. The live feed shifted to the kitchen, where Lena, visibly tense, poured tea, her movements stiff. Victoria approached, her voice a casual greeting, but to Julian's ears, now amplified and chillingly clear, it was laced with menace. "Lena, dear, still struggling with the simplest tasks, I see." The words on screen, now audible, were poison. Victoria's verbal abuse intensified, her voice a low, demeaning hiss that Julian felt in his bones. He watched, horrified, as she shoved Lena, a fragile teacup shattering on the polished floor. Lena flinched, clutching her stomach, then bent to pick up the ceramic shards, but Victoria wasn't finished. She yanked Lena upright with a cruel jerk, then her hand moved, a deliberate, terrifying arc, towards the knife block. Julian's breath caught. His mother's fingers curled around a steel blade, her face on the screen twisted in pure, unadulterated rage. A primal scream tore through Julian's mind. No, not again. Not ever again. He threw open the car door, the tablet clattering to the seat, and sprinted. Julian burst into the kitchen, a roaring fury propelling him forward. "Enough!" The single word ripped from his throat, echoing like thunder in the opulent space. Lena stumbled back, her hand flying to her swollen belly, her eyes wide with shock, then relief. Victoria froze, the glinting knife hovering mid-air, her face a mask of utter disbelief at being caught. She hadn't heard him approach, too consumed by her own cruelty. Julian pointed a shaking finger at the small, blinking camera tucked discreetly above the refrigerator. "Every bruise, every threat, every vile word. It's all recorded, Mother. Every single moment." The active audio, her own damning voice, now served as her accuser. A distant wail pierced the sudden silence, growing louder, closer, echoing through the vast estate. Victoria's wide, horrified eyes snapped from Julian to the camera, then to the sound. The knife clattered to the floor, forgotten. Julian didn't spare her another glance. He moved instantly to Lena, pulling her into a fierce, protective embrace. "You're safe now, my love," he whispered against her hair, his own body trembling. "Completely safe." The sirens escalated, their flashing lights now painting streaks across the kitchen windows, announcing the inevitable arrival of justice. The heavy oak door of the Whitman estate swung open, allowing two uniformed detectives to step inside, their presence an abrupt fracture in the kitchen's tense calm. Julian felt a wave of profound relief wash over him, a stark contrast to the boiling rage that had consumed him moments before. He walked forward, tablet in hand, and offered it to the lead officer. "Everything you need is here," Julian stated, his voice firm, devoid of the tremor he felt inside. The detectives reviewed the damning footage, their faces grim. Victoria Vance, still frozen in disbelief, finally found her voice, a high-pitched, indignant protest. "This is an outrage. You can't." But her words were cut short as, with professional swiftness, the officers moved. The metallic click of handcuffs echoed in the grand foyer, silencing her, her polished facade finally crumbling into pathetic fury. Julian watched, a quiet sense of vindication settling over him. Outside, the estate gates, usually a symbol of impenetrable privacy, were now swarmed. Julian, holding Lena close, watched from a distance as Victoria was escorted to a waiting police vehicle. Her designer clothes, once a shield of status, now seemed a cruel parody, The murmurs from the community members gathered outside carried on the wind, a chorus of disbelief and judgment. "So it's true," a woman whispered, her voice carrying. "Money doesn't clean everything." Julian saw Victoria's head snap up, her eyes blazing with humiliated fury, but the crowd's whispers were relentless. Her perfect world had shattered, not just for him, but for everyone to see. Weeks later, the frantic headlines had faded, Victoria Vance's name relegated to the dry, factual columns of court reports. Julian never visited her. There was nothing left to say, nothing to salvage. He had severed the ties completely, like excising a malignant growth. The estate itself seemed to breathe easier, the air lighter, the silence no longer oppressive but peaceful. Lena moved through the sun-drenched rooms with less tension in her shoulders, the haunted look in her eyes slowly replaced by a quiet serenity. Sometimes, when she thought he wasn't looking, a faint, tentative smile would grace her lips, a fragile bloom of hope in the wake of the storm. Julian found Lena in the nursery, now fully adorned with soft blues and yellows, bathed in the warm, golden light of late afternoon. It was ready, a sanctuary, a symbol of their new beginning. He stood behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist, his hand finding hers resting protectively on her belly. A profound peace settled over him, deeper than any business deal or societal triumph. The Vance legacy, he realized, wasn't about power or status. It was about this: the love he felt for Lena, the safety he could provide, the courage to stand for what was right. He pressed a kiss to her temple. "We're safe now, Lena," he whispered. She leaned into his embrace, her soft smile, a promise of their hopeful future.